Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom to you. This is a glorious day to spend in the courts of our King, to leave behind some of the things that are going on in the world, some of the ordinary mortal toxic things that we deal with on a regular basis, and to step into another realm, step into that realm of beauty and holiness, that realm of majesty and the presence of our King. So I encourage you to lift your eyes, lift your hearts, lift your spirits into the place where you're destined to be, where you come from and where you'll be going, the heavenly courts of our King. And let us take a download of His love, of His goodness, of His kindness, of His wisdom, of His holiness into us today. Greetings to all who are listening to me, as well as those who are here with my in the Biblical Lifestyle Center main hall of gatherings. We are glad to have you join us. We are so happy to let you invite us into your living rooms or your computer screens or your cars or vehicles as you drive, and even your smartphones. We'll be happy to be in the little bitty box. But thank you for letting us be part of your lives. We bless you. From Texarkana, USA. Today we have what I consider to be one of the greatest privileges I experience, which is to talk about the heartbeat of the Torah, the heartbeat of God's messages to mankind, getting close to the center point. We're about to have the great love chapter of Torah. The highlight of the Torah is chapter 19 and chapter 20. And so I just want to encourage you, we're almost there. We're at chapters 12, 13, 14, and 15. 4 chapters in the middle of Leviticus, preparing us for the highlight of Leviticus 19 and 20, Parsha Kedoshim. And the highest point of our life when we learn to love one another and not hold grudges and stand above the conflicts and the frays, and that becoming the sine qua non, or the point, the mark that shows that we are in fact the children of the Holy One, that we don't get caught up in the anger and the negativity and the enmity that human beings suffer for one another. So Tazria and Metzora are the names that the sages gave to these two portions that run from chapter 12 through chapter 15 of Leviticus. Tazria is a word that means bearer of seed. A lot of times it's a woman who gives birth, but it's a bearer of seed in a feminine context, someone who bears a seed and carries it into another generation. And then the second one is Metzora, and we'll understand a lot about that as we go. Metzora is usually translated into English as leper. That's not actually what I would consider the best translation. It's sort of misleading. Metzora is specifically applying to a condition or a circumstance that implies the presence of the Holy One and the brilliant light of His countenance shining into your life, and then the things that you see in your own self as a result of being in the midst of that beautiful shining light, and the things that tend to erupt in you, out of you, in your flesh, as a result of living in this fallen world, in fallen times, with futile, fallen creation, and having to interact with that on a regular basis. So we are going to enjoy, hopefully, this prelude to the love chapter, to the highlight reel of the Torah, and I hope you'll be able to walk with me through it. In order to get the most out of this, and I will just say that, there are certain times when you feel you're close to home, heavenly home. And this is one of that segment of the Torah where I used to feel very estranged. I didn't understand it because I tried to operate in my mind. I tried to operate in my pseudo-intellect. I tried to operate in my logic and my reasoning, and I tried to read books about it. I tried to understand from what teachers taught and preachers preached and rabbis instructed in order to get revelation, get something out of these parshas. And finally, I gave up because nothing satisfied. And so I learned to listen for the voice of the King Himself. And when I realized this is the voice of the King speaking, this is not Moshe's writings, this is not some narrative. The book of Leviticus in general has only 2 short narratives in it. All of the rest is divine speech, what would be read if you followed the the modern New Testament way of putting the words of the Messiah in red, the words of the King would be all, and there would only be two short portions of this entire book that would not be direct divine speech. And those, we had one last week, and we talked about Parsha Shemini. There was a short excerpt of the day, the 8th day, whenever the tabernacle was inaugurated, the manifest presence of the Holy One on earth dwelt among men, and the priesthood was inaugurated, and we began to have the tabernacle open for business. The day it opened for business, we had a little bit of a narrative. And y'all may remember it was quite traumatic. Nadav and Abihu had a very difficult experience, one that is hard to read about, hard to understand. But that was a message to us that we are entering into a realm of interaction with our King that is clothed in great privilege and honor, but carries great responsibility and potential danger if we do not follow the King's protocols and directions, if we do not act as responsible courtiers in the courts of the King. So that was our first narrative. The next narrative will be way back down the road. We're not there yet. We're way down the road from the next narrative, which will be about the narrative of the blasphemer, as it's called, way late in the book of Exodus. Everything else is, book of Leviticus, I should say. Everything else is divine speech, the words of our Creator. Now, I grew up in the 60s, born in the 50s and grew up in the 60s, and there was a couple of guys back in those days. Some of them, both are still alive right now, but they're operating separately. But their names were Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. And most of you in this room are old enough to know who I'm talking about. Some of you who are listening may not be, and you may not be from America. You may not understand this scene over here, this music scene. But there was a song that was written by Mr. Simon, Paul Simon, back in the day. It's called Homeward Bound. And the chorus to that song, and he had some real fast chord changes that kind of drew your attention into it. It was a hook, had a good hook to it. But the chorus went, home where my thoughts escaping, home where my music's playing, home where my love lies waiting silently for me. And of course, it was a romantic ballad about his relationship with his home wife, or whatever it was that he had at that time. Now, the idea of the homeward bound, though, is I want you to see it in the spiritual realm. That every time I hear the King's voice, it's like I'm homeward bound. You remember when, if you were little, if you were like me, we didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have screens of any variety. Maybe a television sometimes in those days, but basically we had no screens. So we played outside, and we played outside all day. When we got out of school, we played outside, and then eventually somewhere down the road, getting close to sundown or whatever, you begin to hear this voice calling out to you. And I would hear my name and my sister's names called out, and that was my mother's voice. I recognized my mother's voice. And the closer I got to the house where I lived, the louder, the more serious, the more sincere, the more I heard that voice and understood who that voice was. I understand the persona that went with the voice. And that's the way it is with this portion of Torah. When we're in this section of Leviticus, we should be able to begin to hear the sweetness of the voice, not just the fact that he's speaking, the fact that he's speaking to us, the fact that he's speaking to his beloved children, to his loved ones, who he really wants the best for, who he's calling to dinner, as the case may be. So I want to tell you a parable, just to help you get started. This is a parable. Don't go around telling people this is my theology. This is a parable to help you understand. Yeshua used parables, the prophets used parables, David used parables. I'm going to use parable. It's what I call the parable of the incarnation, or the parable of the Advent, or the parable of the flesh assignment. And so you have to imagine with me, you have to imagine something like Job 1 or Job 2, and in the heavenly courts, there are eternal spirits everywhere, fragments carrying the divine sparks of God. They are incorporeal, they have no body. They are not subject to the things of this world. They are in the heavenly realm. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is filled with his glory. They see it because they look at it from the standpoint of being eternal, immortal, spiritual beings that have no limitations of the body. So you're one of those. And then you hear the call, a call from the throne. A call like I was talking about when my mother was calling home everybody from the neighborhood. A call saying, come, Bill, or whatever your name. You put your name in there. This is your name. And you're an eternal spirit. And so you rush to the sound of the Father's voice. And you go to the Father's voice, And he says, it's your time. I'm going to assign you a physical body, a physical identity. I'm going to make you a human. I'm going to have you be an incarnate. I'm going to have you become a mortal. You're going to put on flesh. You're going to put on a body. And I'm going to send you. I have a mission for you to participate in on the earth, on planet Earth, in its futile, in its broken form, among broken human beings. I'm going to send you down as an eternal spirit, but clothed in a body. And so, immediately, perhaps you're thinking, I want to be clothed in the most wonderful, glorious body possible. I want to be a superstar athlete. I want to be a superstar model, whatever. I want to be something special. And he says, no, I want to send you as an embryo. I want to send you as a seed. I want to send you in total vulnerability in a mother's womb, in a woman's womb, in a young woman's womb. And I want you to grow in this process. You don't even know what your ethnicity is. But you will have ethnicity. You don't have ethnicity up here. In the divine, your eternal being has no ethnicity. It has no culture. It has no nationality. It has no national loyalty. It has no organizational identification. It has none of that. It has no age. It has no gender. But I'm going to put all that on you, the Father would say. And you will be clothed like an ordinary human being. You will be an incarnate down among the earth, but on a mission, and it was not your permanent mission. That's not your home. That's just your workplace. That's just your workplace. You will be assigned to be there for a limited period of time, years, decades, a generation. You will be assigned to be there in this bodily form, but you will report back to me, and you will need to keep the script that I give you going at all times in your head. You need to stay true to my instructions at all times. And if you don't, then there will be some accountability, but most of all, your mission will not be fulfilled. Your assignment will not be accomplished to its fullest. So here's the situation. You are going, and I'm sending you forth, and I want you to live out every week of natural time that you're on the earth. I want you to live out the Parsha of the week. I want you to live out in the first week of the Parsha cycle. I want you to live out the Parsha of Bereshit. And then I want you to go into Parsha Noah. And I want you to live it out. I want it to be the focus of your thoughts. And all the things that I say, all the things that men do in response to what I say, I want that to be the focus of your thoughts. And as you do so, all the way through for 52 weeks, as you go through this process, there will be times I will call you aside. Matter of fact, every anniversary of every seventh day, I'm going to call you aside. And I'm going to strengthen you again. I'm going to let you reattach to my holiness. I'm going to let you connect with this and what the day you call the Sabbath. I'm going to give you an energy pod where you can come back to me and your holiness can be restored. And not only that, 3 times a year, I'm going to have you come and be in my courts on earth that modeled what I'm doing in heaven. And I want you to be so close to me that you'll be attuned for a whole 7-day period in the spring and a whole 7-day period in the fall. You'll be doing specially focused activities to reorient yourself, to put yourself back in a true-up situation where you're back on mission. And there will be other times when I'll meet with you specifically. But do you understand the mission is, now here's the situation. When you go into this world, and you go in as a baby, and then you become a toddler, and then you become a young child, and you be taught, and then you become a young adult, and an adolescent, and you become you go through puberty. You're going to go through all these things that you're going to have, and you're going to then become a young person. You're going to perhaps be married or have a romantic attachment to some other person. You're going to become part of organizations and institutions. You're going to be part of a nationality. Your ethnicity will bear on you. It will have some bearing on you. Your culture will. As you do this, however, you keep focused on who you really are. What you're really doing is living out the Torah portion of the week. You're living out my script. It is my script for you. But you will be tempted to think that what you're doing is living a life in the normal world. You'll think you're like everyone else down there. You'll tend to think of, and you'll be caught up in the stuff that's happening around you in the physical realm, but you are supposed to be living in this realm with me and just walking through. So the parable of the Advent assignment goes on, and as the Holy One speaks to you or speaks to me, he says, I'm going to give you a uniform, a beautiful, shining garment with beautiful shoes, with beautiful pants or a long garment, a coat of many colors as it may be. And I want you to wear this wherever you go, realizing that sometimes it's going to be muddy And your beautiful shoes are going to get stuff on them. And sometimes you're going to walk through drama and trauma and bloodshed and animosity and stuff down there on the earth that's going to get junk. And maybe your garment will be ripped or torn. Maybe it will become spattered or infected with some sort of disease process. But you're going to deal this. But remember, that's not who you are. And we have true-ups to be able to cleanse that up and make that better all right as it goes on. But don't get caught up in it. So carry, and when you come back, make sure that the shoes, the beautiful shoes I gave you that shine with my light, and the garment of many colors that I've given you, make sure it's in the same state it was. Normal wear and tear accepted. Good legal term. When you return back to me. You'll be responsible for maintaining the beauty and the holiness of the garment that I've given you. Now, that's our Advent assignment. We are sent to live in a fallen world among fallen human beings, but to maintain the calling, the integrity, the holiness of God as He has given it to us. That's how we start this week's Parsha. If you don't understand that, you will not make any sense of the instructions about what the woman who gives birth to a male does, versus what the woman who does give birth to a female does, versus the person who has a spot on their skin as they see it, or a tear, or a burn, or a boil, or some odd thing happening in their skin. You won't understand that. It won't make any sense to you. You'll see, this is crazy. Unless you hear the voice of your Father saying, it's time to come home. How's your garment? How are your shoes? How is your heart? How is your being? How's your eternal spirit that I gave you with? Do you understand that you're coming home? As you come home, you need to present me that beautiful spirit that I gave you in as pure a form as you possibly can. So let's get some context for our discussions about this parable and how it relates to the text of Parshos, Tazria, and Metzora. Context, context, context. All homiletics, hermeneutics are based upon context. So here we are. The tabernacle is in place. Miracle upon miracles. The creator of the universe has done exactly what he said he was going to do. He said he would have us build a tabernacle, and then he would dwell in it, and he would come to earth and dwell among and in the midst of men. And he has done what he has said. In the center of our camp at Sinai is this structure, and above the structure, in the structure, emanating from the structure, is the pulsing presence of the creator of the universe. It's like we were in heaven before this parable began, and we were an eternal spirit. It was like that, but it was on earth. And so we have this as context. All the instructions we're going to be given are in the context of that. So the manifest presence of the Holy One is right in the camp. We are been called to come into that presence. We are part of a community that is not in exile. In this context, we are part of a community that is unified, called under one banner, called under one place. The center point of our existence is the tabernacle, is the presence of the Holy One, and the Torah that is on the tablets inside the Ark of the Covenant there. This is the center point of our life. This is what we deal with. And we have a functioning group of Kohanim, which we translate in English as priests, a people who are assigned specifically to model this holiness life to us and to assist us in reconnecting to that holiness life when we somehow lose it or begin to have it diminish. In addition, we are not only able to live in the same camp as the creator of the universe, he has actually called us to come and commune with him, visit with him, fellowship with him, encounter him, be in his presence. How do we do that from the physical, fleshly world that we're in, and all the mess we've seen, and all the trauma our hearts and souls have experienced, and all the animosity and anger we feel, and the worry and the frustration and the doubt and the jealousy and the envy and the rage and all the stuff that we feel in this life? How do we then step into the manifest presence? But we've been invited to do so, and now we've been taught how to cover the holes over our souls, to be able to be at least in his presence without having a Nadab and Abihu bad experience. So we've got those things taught. In addition, he has begun to download to us the biggest download of divine speech in history of any book of the Bible. The greatest downloaded divine speech is the Kedusha Discourse. It has been going on for a half a parsha now. It will go on for many parshas after this. A continuous flow of divine energy through speech to empower us and commission us to be able to stand and function in his presence. Okay, that's our context. If you think about that, if you think, well, that was historical, it's also your future. Please understand, this is, and it will happen on the earth. It's not someday when you go to heaven. This will be the Messianic kingdom upon the earth. The Messianic kingdom, this will be the reality. So it's not just historic we're talking about. It is definitely prophetic of the days in which the Messiah will reign upon the physical earth. But it's also a reality to us now in our hearts and in our minds and our eternal spirits. So the subject matter of this parsha, of these two parshas together, will be very interesting. What is it about living in this world, encountering fallen people, dealing with futile circumstances, dealing with being incarnate? What is it about that presents the biggest threats to us being able to engage in conversation, communion, fellowship, interaction with our Creator? He's the King. He's called us. He's with us. He wants us in His presence. So do we even understand what aspects of life on earth are fraught with the most difficulty, the most challenge, as far as whether we will or will not be able to effectively communicate with Him, receive His downloads, receive His love, become channels of His majesty and His goodness? Do we know that? Do we even know what it is that causes us to have challenges? What makes a human being tameh? Our English Bibles will read that unclean. What makes us in a state where we cannot focus our intent, our passion, our spirituality upon our King and His instructions? What distracts us from that? What makes us tameh? What makes us fragmented? What makes us conflicted in our loyalties? What makes us vulnerable to distractions and makes us come undone? Men of unclean lips dwelling in the midst of people of unclean lips. What is it that makes us come undone? What are the things in life that we are to be careful how we interact with? Be careful how you engage with these things, because they carry the potential of causing you to disintegrate and lose your integrity, your integer status, to deunify. Because when that happens, when you deunify, when you lose your focus, when you lose your oneness with the Holy One, your Kedusha energy that He gave you through His words begins to dissipate and leak out. And you become to be a hypocritical, you become to be a sepulcher, a whited sepulcher. You become to be a false representation of the King, and you endanger yourself of not fulfilling the purpose for which He put you on earth. So, number one, what makes a human being tameh? Number two, so what are the rules of engagement our King would have us follow whenever, as we inevitably will, as we go around this world, when we deal with things that would be fragmentational, that would be divisive, that would be conflicting in our minds, when we deal with things that our flesh tells us are good, things like marriage and childbirth and bearing kids, things that are and that have a purpose, but have other conflicted loyalties all wrought up in them. What happens if we find that we are not walking in cleanness of purity? Well, what are the rules of engagement with the tameh and the chol realms, the common, the mundane? You know, up in heaven, we heard the seraphim cry over and over again, Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy is the whole God, Lord God Almighty, the Holy One God Almighty. But I picture the angels looking down and saying, mundane, mundane, mundane are the sons of men. Mundane, mundane, mundane are the nations of the earth. Mundane, mundane, mundane are the ethnicities and how they fuss at each other. Mundane, mundane, mundane are the ones who let their fleshly appetites and their pseudo-intellectual opinions. Mundane, mundane, mundane is not it's a lament not a condemnation. How mundane are these things? So what are our rules of engagement? And more importantly, the third thing we'll talk about in this parsha, or you'll read in this parsha, is the rules of recovery, the ways, the pathway to recovery. Once we have had these insults or entanglements or encounters with the unclean and with the common and with the mundane, how do we recover? How do we overcome that? How do we get back to the game we're supposed to play, or the assignment we're supposed to fulfill as these incarnate spirits dwelling in fleshly bodies in a fleshly world? How do we get back to our state of holiness that we're designed to have? Those will be the things we talk about. The last divine instruction that we read, again, context, the last divine instruction we read sort of set us up for this. It was in Parsha Shemini, and it was Leviticus 11:45 through 47. I'm actually not going to read 46 because I want to kind of get on with this. I want to read 45 and 47. Ani Adonai, this is the Holy One speaking, your Creator, calling from you from home. Ani Adonai ha-ma'ale echem me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am the Holy One who brought you, plural, up. Remember this from last week if you were here or you listened? I brought you up, not just out. That's many places it says I brought you out of the land of Egypt. No, he said I brought you up from the land of Egypt. I am the Holy One who brought you up from the land of Egypt. We have been elevated. We have been brought out and up. Now what that tells you is, you remember Exodus 19. I hope you all remember this, because if you don't get this picture, you won't understand why you're different than most people in the world. Why we're supposed to be different. Why we need to be different. In Exodus 19, as he began to tell us what our mission was, and you will be to me a Am Segillah, a special treasured possession, and you will be a kingdom of priests, and you will be a holy nation. Right before he said that, he says, remember. Remember what? How I lifted you up on eagle's wings. Remember how I lifted you up on eagle's wings? And I brought you to myself? Now, when he says to you in Leviticus 11, I brought you up from the land of Egypt, now you understand what he means. He has carried you. He's taken you into his holy realms. He has given you access to the holy heavenly things. We are in that process. He's been brought up. That upness, the state of our upness, is what gives reason and meaning to everything he's about to say. If you have not been brought up, or if having been brought up, you have forgotten where you are and why you're here, and you have slid back down. If you have lived out the other Paul Simon song that I'm sliding away, sliding away. Now, if you've slid away from the upness, you will not get this whole parsha. You will not get any of these instructions. This is for people who know they have been called up and been brought up and have a reason to be up in the upness, carried on the wings of the eagle unto himself. Because when you're there, then you're back on your assignment. You're back ready to go back where you came from. So he says that, I am the Holy One who brought you up from Egypt. And it says, Liyot lachem Elohim, to become your creator, your God, your sovereign, your one authority figure. That's why I got you up. That's why I brought you up. So I could become your only source. That's when Yeshua said, my sheep hear my voice, and the voice of another they will not shema. This is the same concept. I brought you so you would listen to me, so you would be able to hear my voice and not the competing voices of your ethnicity or your culture or your nation or your religion or your organization or your institution or your family, for that matter. You would listen, and your sovereign authority would be taken from my voice. So he says that, and he says, "V'hayetim kedoshim ki kadosh ani." You are to remain kadosh. You are in this realm of holiness energy flowing into your being at all times. You are to stay in this kadosh state, because for I am kadosh. If you're with me, we're going to have this constant flow of holiness going from me into you. But you got to stay in it. Stick with it. Stay close. And then there's a verse 46, and verse 47 says, Lahavdil ben hatameh uvein hatahor. And you are to make a distinction, a separation. You are to mark the boundary lines between the tahor, the clean, and the tameh, the unclean. You are to always be conscious of what will fragment you, what will distract you, what will get you caught up in the mundane, will get you caught up away from and taken away from your purpose and your mission and your holiness flow. You need to understand what things will cause that to happen, and you need to separate yourself from those things and divide those from the holy things. And you are to distinguish and make a separation between a life force that is for consumption. I think in the English it says an animal that you can eat. And there's a level at which you need to understand the animals you can eat. That's not what this Torah is saying right here. That's not what the Holy One is saying. What the Holy One is saying is more than that. He doesn't use the term animal. He uses the term life. A life force. What life force will you associate with? What life force will you become a consumer of? And what life force are you not going to be a consumer of? Well, if you understand how that fits into your culture and your ethnicity and your family situations and your argument, what will you let to be your life force and what will you not? And that is where that ended last week. So we start this week, and the Holy One is saying to you again, clearly the theme of the entire book of Leviticus keeps saying, you are to be holy. You are to be kadosh. You are to be filled with the holiness of God. It's not some external standard. It's an internal spiritual reality of being in my presence and drawing off of my majesty and my goodness. You are to be in that constantly because that's who I am, and if we're together, that's who you'll be. And the sub-theme this week is, how are you to separate us and yourselves from your uncleanness? Okay? Now, I've told you one parable. I'll tell you another little story. Actually, I just tell you that every picture in the Torah tells a story. The tabernacle in particular is this beautiful set of metaphors and imagery. It was a real place. It is a real place. It represents a real place. It represents the scale model of the heavenly courts and the heavenly throne room. And it was upon the earth for a while. And it will be again. But for the time being in which we live, it's not here. Not in the form that we see it mentioned here. But the pictures that we are given of this tabernacle and what took place in the tabernacle are eternal realities. They are the story behind the picture. So everything we see happen in the tabernacle, all the furnishings, all the decorations, all the colors, all the fragrances, all the scents, everything in this tabernacle is designed to tell us a story of what's happening and what heaven is like, what the heavenly realms are like, what the courts of the king are like, and what majesty is like, and what beauty is like, and what goodness is like that we're supposed to be drawing down, what holiness is like. This is what it is. And then the other part of that is that the priests that we see, the Aaronic priests, Aaron and his sons, who stand as priests, they also are a picture telling a story. While we are honoring the fact that real human beings actually served in this role, the role is just a role. The role is designed. It wasn't ever designed to bring us salvation or any of the things theological things that people want. It was designed to tell us a story about a greater priest of the heavenly realm and everything about him and everything about what he's doing for us in the heavenly realm, in the heavenly courts at all times. So every picture tells a story is important for what we're going to get, because otherwise you'll get caught in the details. I mean, there's a lot of details in these two portions. It's almost mind-numbing, and it is. It's supposed to numb your mind. You are not supposed to understand this with your common sense. This requires spiritual download from heaven, and you need to hear the voice of your Father calling you, as opposed to reading a text on a line on a page. So here we are. The Kedusha discourse is underway. This discourse constitutes the most intimate, continuing download of heavenly wisdom in human history. We're in the middle of it. How privileged. For lovers of divine speech and direct communication from the throne, it just doesn't get any better than this. The Holy One is doing all the talking. And our assignment is just to listen, to treasure, to cherish, to be inspired by what he's telling us, and then to meditate on it and to put it into practice and to talk about it with our friends and our neighbors. Keep it on the tip of our tongue. Talk about it when we sit at our homes and when we walk by the way, when we lie down, when we rise up. Keep it before our eyes at all times. Keep it on our hands, showing the symbol that we're in touch with it. We're connecting with it in kinetic ways. That's what this is. And in this course, he's going to tell us the core principles of his strategy to keep us on task, on time, on target, on mission, and to get us back to where we need to be whenever we return these bodies to him. We return the mortality, the corporeality to him, and we go take back up our eternal spirit that he's with him forever without corporeal bodies, without gender, without ethnicity, without any of the cultural or national things that we identify with and think are so important down here. When we return to being true citizens of heaven, where that's our only loyalty is to him, that will be where we are. He lays out in detail the essential elements of holiness and consecration that he expects from his bride to be. He tells us what kind of lifestyle, what kind of mindset, what kind of activities it's going to take to keep ourselves pure for him and to be willing to do his work and will at all times. We are realm travelers. We traffic in two realms. We're supposed to. We're supposed to traffic in the heavenly realm. We're supposed to be in his courts. We're supposed to be courtiers of his. We are an eternal spirit, and we still are, even though we are in bodies, we are an eternal spirit. We should be able to go in and out of the courts of the Holy One at all times. This is our place. But we are also now incarnate mortal beings. And we have a place down here. So we are to traffic in this realm, and we're supposed to do it excellently. We're supposed to do it well. We're supposed to be a model of how to do it to other people who have not had the experiences that we have had with our King. So we are realm travelers. We're supposed to be going back and forth at all times, living in two realms at the same time. Our hearts and our minds in the heavenlies, and our feet and our hands at work down here in the physical realm. Now, I was picturing this parable in my mind this morning as I was walking, and as I was there before the Holy One, I heard him tell me he was going to send me back down to earth. He'd send me to earth as a corporal human being, and I had to live among human beings and function among cultures and ethnicities and nations and politics and all sorts of stuff down here, flesh and appetites and food and elimination of food, all the things that happen down here on earth. That I have to do that. It's like I said, I don't want to go. I want to be with you. And he says, being with me is a part of your mission. But there's a be with me here part of your mission, and a be with me there part of the mission. And you can't be with me here fully until you are willing to be with me there. So that's the cross. I'm hearing this process. Okay, so we've got to deal with life. We got to deal with mortal life. We got to deal with age. We got to deal with our body and whatever shape it came in, whatever skin color or pigmentation he assigned to us, whatever family we were born into. We got to deal with our siblings. We got to deal with our parents, or we got to deal with our physical health. We got to deal with our worn out knees and our shoulders, and we got to deal with the minds that seem to sometimes work better than others. We got to deal with mouth that sometimes talks when it shouldn't talk and says things it shouldn't say, and attitudes that we develop too quickly. We got to deal with all this humanity is down here. We got to deal with some people who are just not friendly. Some people we can't even hardly stomach to be around. And some of those will be in our family, and some of those will be in the political realm, and some of those will be in the workplace that we work in, and we got to deal with all this stuff. So help us to stay in contact, stay in this place where we're with him down here, as opposed to being on our own down here. So we're realm travelers. He says part of our job is to distinguish between and keep the separation between what's holy and what's profane, or holy and what's common. And the other thing is to separate between what's clean and what's unclean. Now, the holy and the profane, the holy things are the things that attach us to Him. They're our connecting points to the holiness of God. Why is the Sabbath holy? Because on the Sabbath, He has set a portal where He can release His holiness into us, into human beings, and refresh our holiness. Why is the Torah the Holy Torah? Why is it called the Holy Torah? Why is it the Holy Bible? Because through these words, through the messages that He's spoken to us, He infuses us with holiness. It is a portal into His holiness. Why was the tabernacle? Why is the whole imagery of the tabernacle called the Holy Tabernacle, the Kadosh, the Mikdash? Why is it that? Because you see, in that realm, we are able to connect through thinking about it, through talking about it, through imagining it, through envisioning it, through meditating on it. We can draw the holiness of the Holy One down into our lives and refresh it and restore it to where we can function better. So all the things that are holy. Why did He give us the Holy Spirit? He didn't give us the Holy Spirit as some third party of something. He gave us the Holy Spirit because that was our most common, frequent portal that we can contact. He is the most frequent, common portal. He is with us at all times. He never leaves us. He's always here, so we draw constantly. Whenever we engage with Him, we will draw His holiness into us. He will make us holy. That is we could get through other things that are holy, but this holiness factor is critical. That's why we separate the holy from the profane, and the common, and the ordinary, and the mundane. We need to stay attached to the holy things. And if you ever feel like you're losing your way, just attach yourself again to another holy thing. Find a way to do that. Have someone help you and pray you into it. Walk you into it where you reconnect with the Sabbath. You reconnect with the Torah. You reconnect with the Holy Spirit. Don't just, well, I'll leave that there. You get the picture. You have it in your power. You have the technology to connect with the holy and draw this back into yourself and be redeemed and restored from this process. Now, the other thing that you're called to do is separate the holy from the clean from the unclean. The tahor in Hebrew, which means moving into the realm of wellness and wholeness. Because there's another way you can go. You can go to the realm of fragmentation, dissolution, decomposition. And that's the tameh. That's the unclean. Clean and unclean has nothing to do with cleanliness. It has to do with wholeness. So when Yeshua kept saying to people, not be healed, but be whole, be made whole, He's talking about the entire realm of everything, not just the fact that their physical symptoms are going to go away, that He is going to make them whole. He's going to bring them back into the realm where they're pursuing this realm of tahor, the tahora, and this is going to bring about this level of interaction where they are able to cast off the distractions, the fragmenting things, the viruses. To people who are in computers, I say that tameh, the tuma, the type of uncleanness, is analogous to a computer virus, malware. It will eventually slow down your operation and perhaps even shut it down, but it will slow it down where you can't function the way you're supposed to function. That's what the unclean things that the Holy One warns us about are. And when we bring it into ourselves, we become vessels of that uncleanness. When we allow ourselves to get conflicted, when we allow ourselves to get angry, when we allow ourselves to get offended, when we allow ourselves to get worried, stressed, every one of these events is an invitation to the uncleanness that will be like a virus in our hard drive. And we will cease to function well. Worried people do not function on the glory of God. You do understand this. Angry, offended people do not function in the love of God. It's inconsistent, totally inconsistent with this process. You see what happens. The uncleanness begins to attach. And Yeshua and Paul will both have a lot to say about this uncleanness factor. I hope I'll have a time to go through that with you, of what Yeshua talks about, how he tells us to identify what is the highest, worst parts of the uncleanness in this world and how it affects us the most. And then Paul will come behind him and he will expand upon what Yeshua taught. Well, I'll get to that hopefully in a little while. But we're called to disentangle ourselves from the unclean A good soldier does not entangle himself with the affairs of this life, of this secular world. We are to learn how to deal with the fact that we're in the midst of all this stuff, but not get tangled up in it. And you can kind of take this picture. If you're caught up in a personal controversy or a drama with some person over something they did or didn't do, or somebody maybe in the past generation, are you caught up in an ethnic struggle or a cultural struggle or a racial disagreement? If you're caught up in any of this stuff, if you're caught up in worry, anxiety, fear about the future, if you're caught up in any of that stuff, you realize you're having the holiness energy of God drain right out of you, and you are sending the whited sepulchre message to the world. Our responsibility as realm travelers is to discern and navigate through the realms. Kodesh. First realm is Kodesh, the realm of the holiness, where we're connecting with Him. It's cleansed of corruption, of pollution, cleansed of multiple conflicting loyalties. It's totally set apart, totally dedicated, totally consecrated to the service of and doing the will of God. I have come in the volume of the book, Yeshua said, to do your will. I delight to do your will. Nothing hinders me. Nothing stops me from doing your will. No matter what the cost, no matter what the circumstance in my natural flesh, I will do your will. That's the Kadosh. The Kol, the opposite side of that spectrum, is often translated common or profane or ordinary or mundane. It means to carry a compromising or mixed loyalty. You want to serve the Holy One. You want to do His will. But you have conflicting loyalties. You have conflicting loyalties to your spouse. You have conflicting loyalties to your children. You have conflicting loyalties to your parents. You have conflicting loyalties to your neighbors. You have conflicting loyalties to your ethnicity. You have conflicting loyalties to your nation. You have conflicting loyalties to your business and to your workplace and to your finances and to your lenders. You have conflicting loyalties, so you want to do the will of the Holy One, but you have conflicts. You are mixed. You have a double mind. You have a divided heart. You hear these scriptures, these things from the psalmist. I want an undivided heart. Give me an undivided heart. Well, an undivided heart has no conflicting loyalties. Always puts the loyalty to the Holy One first, no matter what it means. This is what Abraham had to have. The picture is Abraham. His loyalty was to the Holy One, even more so than his own son. That your flesh is cringing right now. I understand that. It is a conflicting loyalty. And you're going to read about the Tazria, where the woman who gives birth, who has a baby in her womb, and then she gives birth to a male child or a female child. You say, why is she unclean? Do you not understand yet? Her conflicting loyalty? Do you not get it? You think, because you're in the natural realm, you're thinking the most important loyalty she has is to that child. And the Holy One says, therein lies your problem. You don't understand that if she doesn't respond to me correctly, she'll never do the right thing for that child. Well, we have those issues. So the Kol means that which is common, profane, carries a compromising or mixed loyalty. It despoils a thing's wholeness, takes away your wholeness. Then there's the Tahor, the clean, the realm of that which is going towards this purpose of God, the plan of God, that is undistracted. And we find those things. We find examples of a sheep, for instance. The sheep is a clean animal. Why is the sheep a clean animal? Because it listens to the sound of its shepherd's voice. And because it knows how to process out the toxins that it receives. It has given special gifts of stomachs, the very way of digesting even the natural food is given to them, and so is the cow. They have these different rumination systems, ways to take care of the toxins, and ways to respond to their master that are examples to us of what it looks like to be Tahor. On the other hand, you see other creatures that are predatory, territorial. You see, those are of the unclean realm. Those which are carnivores, or those which are eat carrion, eat the dead, eat their own waste. I mean, you see different things, and they picture different things. Every picture tells a story. and you see if whatever you ingest or get close to, whatever you associate very closely with, you will take on its characteristics, because that's what happens when you are close to something. You know, people say, you know, that when you're married, you begin to be and think like your spouse over a course of time. Why? Because you're associated with them, and they rub off on you. And the same thing happens to them to some degree or another. So this idea of being tahor, on point with the Holy One, as opposed to being on point with the things of the earth. Then there's the tameh. The other side of this is that which causes you to become conflicted and compromised. And eventually that will wind you down, take you out, take the energy away from you to the point where you become pretty much useless from a heavenly standpoint. Where you become a vessel of anger. Where you become one of those people who complains all the time. One of those people who are always in the accusation, judgment, criticism mode. Whose negative speech is and negative behavior, your attitude becomes so toxic that nobody wants to be around you. And if you had something to say of the kingdom, they wouldn't listen because your life is inconsistent with what you would be saying. This is the toxicity of the tameh. This is what happens to you in that realm. So those are the realms. The fragmentation process, every time we have an intersection with the tameh, with that which is of this earth and focusing on the conflicting loyalties of this land, of this incarnate body. Every time that happens, we have to either overcome it or succumb to it. We have to either embrace the uncleanness or shake it off and wipe it off. And if we don't know what it is, if we would not accept the Holy One's discussions and descriptions of what it is, of course we won't shake it off. Matter of fact, we'll embrace it. And we'll think we're doing right. And that's one of the reasons I think some of the biggest lies of modern religion have told you don't have to worry about this. Don't do this anymore. Because now that means you're totally weak and totally vulnerable, and you have no ability to shake off the things and wipe off the things he wants you to wipe off. So, let me kind of, if something distracts you from your mission, or someone distracts you from your calling and your assignment, how would they do that? Then it's unclean. It's part of the unclean realm. If it distracts you from your divine calling and mission, it is part of the unclean realm to you. What distracts you from your divine mission? What makes you mad? What makes you worried? What makes you afraid? What makes you envious? What makes you jealous? What makes you lustful? What makes you greedy? What makes you selfish? Whatever it is that causes you to have another priority besides the will of God in your life, that is uncleanness to you. If it causes you to worry that I need to do what the Holy One says, but I also need to take care of this business here, then you won't follow his instructions because you feel like your will is more important than his will. If you if you are confused, if you tend to find yourself not knowing what the will of God is, how to hear the voice of God, how to touch to the holy things of God, something has caused you to be that way. Other focuses, other interests have caused you to be that way. Because the Holy One is always available. The Holy Spirit is always with you. He's always calling you. The voice is always calling to you from the house, come home, my son, my daughter. And if you're caught in deception as well. Now, there's so much here I could talk about. I want to talk about what Yeshua said. Yeshua said in Matthew 15, verses 18 through 20, the things, and he uses the term that would be in Hebrew, devarim, the words, the stuff that comes, the substantive things that come out of your mouth. This is your evidence. This is your evidence, what's coming out of your mouth, what's coming out of your face. What words are being spoken, what messages are being told, coming out of your two lips and your tongue. That tells you whether you're tameh or whether you're not. I know you could get all caught up in what you eat and what you don't drink, and you should know those things. You could get caught up in but here's the issue, the litmus test. We understand an animal is tahor, is clean, if it parts the hoof and chews the cud. There's two signs. We understand that a creature of the waters is tahor if it has fins and scales. There's two signs. Well, here's the thing about there's only one sign that tells the world whether you're tamei in the tamei realm, and that's what comes out of your mouth. This is the sign. It says, the words which come out of your mouth, they come from the heart, and these make a man unclean. These make a man tamei. For out of the heart comes. So test number one was, what are the words? Test number two, if there were one, was, what is the motivation for the words? Out of the heart come. First thing is evil thoughts. I'll talk about that in a minute. Second thing is murder. Third thing is adultery. Fourth thing is fornication. Fifth thing is theft. Sixth thing is false testimony. Has anybody heard these phrases before? Murder, adultery, false testimony. Do you know what he's saying? Are you catching these 10 words that the Aseret Hadabrot, the message of the 10 words and how this is cleanness? It defines cleanness for you. Because out of the heart, when you are unclean, what comes out is the opposite of what the 10 words are. The adultery comes out. The anger, the malice comes out. The wounded, the false testimony, the lies, the deception, the manipulation comes out. Whoa. So he says, these things come out of the heart, come the evil thoughts, the murder, the adultery, the fornication, the theft, the false testimony, the slander. He says, these make a man clean. These make a man tamei. Do you get it? Careful what comes out of your mouth, because it's telling the world a story. And it's not only telling them a story, unfortunately, it's like darts. It's like an infectious disease that comes out, and it will infect the people that you talk to. Whew. Well, what are evil thoughts? The first thing he said was evil thoughts. This makes you unclean. So we say, I don't have any evil thoughts. Well, let's redefine what evil thoughts are. It would be thoughts that are ra, which are self-absorbed, selfish in their mindsets. Thoughts that are what your will is versus what God's will is. It's a very simple, big, all-encompassing process. If you are thinking anything about what you want as opposed to what God wants, if you're thinking about what you like, what you don't like, what you hate, who you don't like, what politics you like, what don't like, what ethnicity you like, you don't like, whatever culture you like, you don't like, whatever. If you're thinking about that, that's the evil thoughts. Therein lies the conflict. Therein lies the fragmentation. Therein lies the difficulty of staying close to the Holy One. Then the idea of murder. Yeshua's told us otherwise. Murder is not just the act of sticking the knife in the guy or hitting him in the head with a rock. Murder is having any animosity toward a fellow man. Murder is having any negative speech toward them or about them. Lashon hara, the negative speech about people. This is murder in his eyes. This is the Holy One's vision. Now, do you see where this mouth thing comes in? But the mouth only speaks what's in the heart. The shocking thing is, it's not just stuff off the top of your head. It's out of the depths of your heart. If you're saying things that are critical, if you're saying things that are angry, if you're saying things that are vindictive, if you're saying things that are worried and anxious, it means there's something really bad wrong down inside. It means you got crisis mode down inside, and you are fragmented and broken, and you need a touch of the Holy to bring the holiness infusion back. Well, that's what Yeshua has to say about that. What does Paul have to say about it? Shaul says this, Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 and 20. Right before the fruit of the Spirit, he's contrasting what being with the Spirit, and the fruit of that is what the holiness infusion gives. He's contrasting that with something else. He says, now the works of the flesh. How do you know what uncleanness is? You see it in your flesh. You see it's a mark on your flesh. The works of the flesh are evident, which are, and I'm going to give you these series. Adultery, fornication. We've heard these. This sounds like what Yeshua said, right? Adultery, fornication, and then he says this magic word, uncleanness, tuma. Paul, after the resurrection, after the ascension, after the Spirit of given, Paul is telling you still got this problem down here. And I'm going to tell you what uncleanness is associated with. Murder, adultery, fornication, lewdness, idolatry. He's going to go forward. Lewdness, idolatry. You talk about bodily functions a lot. You like to talk about sexuality a lot. You like to talk about stuff outside the context. Lewdness, idolatry. Giving value and assigning priority to things that are not our king. Sorcery, trying to manipulate people. That's all that is, manipulation and deception. Hatred. Contentions. This is what uncleanness looks like. This is how uncleanness comes out of you. Hatred. If you hate anybody, do you hate any person? Do you hate any group? Do you hate any nation? Do you have hatred in you? This is an evidence of something bad wrong inside. Contentions. Do you immediately want to argue with people? I mean, the social media platform of Twitter. Every time I open it up, because I try to use every medium in some way. Every time I open up one particular one, Twitter in particular, and it's just the way people have used it or whatever, but you feel immediately contentious. You want to argue with everything everybody says. Even if they might say one thing that you agree with, but they say one thing you don't agree with, you want to point out, this is just the way in which this media has developed. And you want to argue with stuff. This is the contentiousness process. Are you contentious about doctrine? Are you contentious about theology? Are you contentious about politics? Are you contentious about ideology? Are you contentious about what is and is not science? What are you contentious about? Wherever your contentiousness is, this is what the Holy One will tell you is, that's the area we need to work on next. Because the people of God are peaceable. The sons and the daughters of God are peaceable. They may know there's a difference or a problem out there, but they stay at shalom and work toward a solution rather than blasting the people who are engaged in the misfunction. So it's adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions. Boy, Paul's on a roll. He's not through. Jealousies. Are you envious of what somebody else makes at work? Are you envious about how much money Bill Gates has? Or are you jealous about somebody having something or getting a job or getting a position or getting some respect or honor that you don't get, or you feel like you're entitled to it? This is part of the uncleanness, evidence of the uncleanness. Jealousies, outbursts of wrath. That's why, there is nothing divine or spiritual about anger. Not the way we do it on earth. Not the way we do it among men. Not that way. Because that is a very selfish, self-righteous approach. There's nothing spiritual about it. So if we realize our tendency outbursts of wrath, tend toward outbursts of wrath, if we accept or embrace outrage. Now, let me just say one thing in this regard. If anyone in person, on television, on any social media, or any other source ever tells you you should be outraged about this, don't be. Understand it is your assignment not to be. It is your kingdom assignment not to be outraged about whatever it is. You're not to be outraged about anything. We're supposed to be at shalom, and we're supposed to be bringers of hope and bringers of practical means of solving problems, not addressing them with anger or with rage. But Paul's not through yet. Jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, wanting your own way, wanting to promote yourself, wanting to be recognized, wanting to be loved, wanting to be respected, wanting to be honored, wanting to be thought wise, wanting to be thought holy or spiritual, wanting to be promoted, whatever it is. This is uncleanness. Dissensions, heresies, envy, murder, drunkenness, revelries. And then he just says, and the like. etc., etc., etc. I hope you're getting the drift here. When you are drifting away from the ways and the plans and the strategies of the Holy One to bring redemption and restoration to the world through you and through your life, when you're getting upset about stuff in the world and the flesh, then you are evidencing uncleanness, and you are in danger of polluting the garment that he gave you and failing in the mission that he assigned to you. He says, I tell you this stuff beforehand, as I've always told you in the time past. And I tell you this, that those who practice such things, and that long list of things we just talked about, if you practice those things, if that is something you do repetitively, those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. It's serious, folks. This is real. This is not something we write off because it was written in another day. These are the evidences. We're supposed to be getting these pictures so we know that this is a danger to who we are and what we're called to do. Now, Paul also went on in Romans 1 to tell us what happens if you start embracing uncleanness. If you embrace the tameh. And we're getting with verse 22, he says, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. In other words, they lost the connection. They ceased to have this intimate connection of the Holy to the Holy One himself. So they ceased to get these downloads of his revelation, his holiness, and his energy. If, as and when they did that, they didn't retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to the first thing that happens is they get a debased mind. A mind that just doesn't think right. A pseudo-intellect. A mind that thinks it's right, that always thinks it's right. A mind that always thinks its opinion is correct. A mind that always thinks its way is better. A mind that always wants to argue and contend. This is the mind, the debased mind. The debased mind is not the peaceful mind. The debased mind is not the mind at shalom, not the mind who has joy and is full of thanksgiving. The debased mind is that which is always upset, angry, worried, offended, lustful, envious, jealous, all the things that are included in the uncleanness. So he gave them over to a debased mind to do those things that are not fitting. And they became filled with all unrighteousness and fornication and wickedness and covetousness and maliciousness and full of envy and murder and strife and deceit and selfish-mindedness, evil-mindedness. And they become whisperers and backbiters and haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, the ultimate conspithio, disobedient to parents, haters of God, violent, inventors of evil things, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but approve of others who do such things. Whew. So this is an important lesson for us to learn. We are here on this earth. We have been given corporeality. We have been given mortality. We've been given ethnicity. These are all things we steward. We've given age. We've been given gender. We're stewarding these things. We're designed to bring holiness into every level of the earth, every fragment, every portion of the humanity, how it's dissolved. So we are important. We are critical to the plan to bring his holiness into every corner of the world and every group of people. So here we are, but we have this challenge is that we have to deal with unclean things. We have to decide whether we will think unclean thoughts. We have to choose whether we will embrace unclean emotions and feelings and attitudes and moods. We have to determine if we're going to speak unclean words out of our unclean lips to cause unclean results in other people. And as and when and to the extent we do so, we need to remember that there are protocols designed to cleanse us of this, purge us of this, and reconnect us with the Holy One. But there are also consequences if we choose to reject those protocols. Now let's look at the Tazria. Two main subjects we talk about this week in the Parsha. First one is the Tazria. That's the woman who conceives seed and then bears a child. Have certain things that happens if it's a male child, certain things that happens if it's a female child. Then the second one is the Metzora, the one who has in the light of the Holy One, which is the only place this matters, in the light of the presence of the Holy One, when they're interacting with the Holy One, they see things that weren't there before. You notice he never talked to us about this before, but before the tabernacle was in place, before he invited us into his presence, we never talked about spots and wrinkles and blemishes and sores. We never talked about that stuff before. We are talking about it now because in his presence we see stuff. If you notice this phenomenon, the closer you are to the Holy One, the less proud and arrogant you become. The more humble you are, the more sensitive you are to your own failings, not the failings of others. That's when you're not close to the Holy One. When you're worried about what evildoers are doing, you're worried about what other people are doing wrong, it tells you you're not close to the Holy One. But when you get close to the Holy One, you start looking at yourself. I'm dark, but I'm lovely, as the maiden says. I sense I have these failings, and I don't want these failings. I don't want these faults. I don't want this anger in me. I don't want this wrath in me. I don't want this envy in me. I don't want this worry and anxiety and depression in me. I don't want that lust in me. I don't want it, because you see, in his light, we're seeing these things. And his calling is drawing us to say, if you can't see it, you can't deal with it. So he lets us see it in his light. So in this context, he shows us these things, and he says the Metzora will be you. The idea is, as you come closer to me, you will start seeing stuff, and you're going to want it to be diagnosed by the priest. You're going to want to say, is this that? Nobody has to tell you about it. There's the thing about the whole Metzora process and the uncleanness, it is not something a third party does to you. It's something you do to yourself. You choose to see this and say, I need to get this addressed. If you're looking at other people and saying uncleanness in them, if you're looking at other people and seeing uncleanness in them, you're missing the entire point. This has nothing to do with the uncleanness of somebody else. This only has to do with the uncleanness in you. This is self-diagnosis. This is self-evaluation, self-examination. Once you sense something going on, then you submit it to your priest. Of course, our priest is Yeshua HaMashiach, the Messiah, the high priest of Holy One after the nature of Melchizedek, after the line of Melchizedek. So, we are there. Let's talk about the Tazria. I don't want to get too graphic with you, but y'all do know where babies come from, right? There are certain things in the process of where babies come from that cause you to have a conflicting interest with the Holy One. That cause you to feel fleshly emotions and fleshly passions and fleshly responses. So the whole process of having babies or birthing babies or conceiving babies is fraught with a bunch of flesh. If we understand that, we know it's an encounter. We got this encounter. We're all going to probably bring forth, most of us are going to bring forth babies, maybe several. I've got 6. I didn't actually birth them, but I had a part to play. Now, when you realize that every time you engage in the activities that will bring forth babies or conceive babies, you are touching a realm that is the last thing you're thinking about is doing the will of the Father. I'm sorry, you do realize this, right? You're not sitting there having this conversation with him. I long to do your will. I long to do your will. Do you realize this? So, in other words, we have taken a step. Now, it's not evil. I'm not telling you you're sinning. I'm telling you you're losing the focus because of the things that we are put on earth to do. It is part of the nature of being incarnate. It is a part of the nature of being corporeal. Part of a humanity factor down here. This will not be part of our eternal nature, but it is part of who we are right now. And we have to deal with the fact that we have just dealt with lust. We've dealt with desire. We've dealt with self-consciousness. We've dealt with whatever that took place. That was just in the conceiving part. Oh, wait, now we got this thing growing in the woman's body. Think of Miriam, young girl from Nazareth. She had a particularly unique scenario. And she's going to start growing. Her belly's going to start growing, right? And people in the neighborhood are going to notice, right? Her friends. And how's she going to explain this? They're going to have their own explanations. They're going to have their own theories. Now, she's got to deal with the conflict of how do I deal with that? How do I feel about that? When they unjustly accuse me of what I know they're going to unjustly accuse, what I probably would unjustly accuse me of too if it was not me. When that happens, how will I respond? Will I get angry? Will I get vindictive? Will I feel self-righteous, more powerful, more holy than they are? What will I feel? Just using Miriam as the example. Mary, as most of us know her. And so what is she going through? Plus, she begins to have hormonal changes. Her hormones change, and she has moods. I don't think we're telling stories here. I think we're telling things you don't know. If you've ever been a pregnant woman or been around a pregnant woman, you understand moods. Hormonally induced moods. Anger comes out. Fear, tears come out of nowhere. Worries, anxieties about stuff that... Now you see where all this happens. Why the Tazria is right in the middle of the uncleanness realm? Not because she's a horrible person or a sinner. Not because she did anything totally wrong. It's just that it's the nature of the environment she's in and the circumstance she's facing. Put her in conflict of interest situations. And that's just the beginning. Oh, then when the baby's born, who's her first loyalty to? We'll see who are our options. Who are our contestants for the throne? Well, there's husband. There's any elder brothers or sisters. There's mama, there's daddy. Grandma, grandpa, as the case may be at the time. There's aunts and uncles. There's the Holy One who has something to say about this whole process. And then there's this helpless child who can't feed themselves, can't comfort themselves. So who's your priority? Where's your priority? Do you see the conflicting priorities? Why this is unclean? Why it puts you in a very awkward situation? Why a woman has to choose at what moment which one will be given what level of priority. And all of them have to be dealt with. That is a conflict, is a built-in conflict. And what happens? Why do you think women have postpartum depression? Part of it is because of hormonal issues, loss of the placenta, loss of the size. And part of it, however, has to do with the fact that they don't know how to handle these conflicting loyalties, these responsibilities, these challenges. Now, do you understand why Tazria is the first thing mentioned with regard to human to May? This is the most conflicted a person is ever going to be whenever they have a baby. That is the most conflicting thing you'll ever experience. So he says, I want you to picture Yeshua, because Yeshua was this baby, and when you have a male child, I want you to understand why Mary did what she did. Waited 8 days, stayed alone 8 days, and the 8th day, she went, where did she go? She went to the temple from Bethlehem, where the baby was born, to the temple, 6 miles down the road, down the dusty road. She took the baby, though, out. She met Anna. She met Simeon. They spoke over her. They brought the baby out for the first time on the 8th day. Circumcision took place. Naming took place. Went to the temple. Offered a turtle dove or two turtle doves. Did the things that are spoken because she knows, she understands she's in a conflict situation. And things besides her love of the Holy One now have a controlling power over her. And she wants to get as close to the Holy One as she can. And then the same thing with regard to a girl who is going to produce other children, go through this process herself. We double the process, double the sanctification, double the setting apart. It's not that they're horrible people, they've done sin. It is the fact that they need to have a recognition of how much conflict there is in this whole realm. And then we have the fact that if we embrace uncleanness, if we don't deal with it as he tells us to deal with it, if we don't recognize the difference between uncleanness and cleanness, if we don't recognize what fragments us and just causes disloyalty from that which is pointing us into the purpose of his plan for us, if we don't realize that, and we embrace it, we pick it up, it starts accumulating. It's like dust on your shoes. It's not just one step, it's the whole journey. You got all the dust of all the places you went on your shoes. This is what happens with uncleanness. And when that happens, it begins to have an impact upon you. And when you get close to the Holy One, then you feel like you see stuff. And so we have this whole idea of the Metzora, the Zara'at. It's not leprosy, as most people think of it. That's an English translation from the 16th or 17th century that makes you think it's a disease, a biological disease that has medical connotations. It's not that. This is a spiritual condition. Zara'at, Metzora, being what the Bible in English would refer to as a leper, is not being someone who has Hansen's disease and whose skin is scaling off. Matter of fact, if you look at the description of what Zara'at is and what a Metzora is and how you define what a Metzora is, you will see it cannot possibly be leprosy. It's a whole different set of diagnoses and a whole set of symptoms. So it's just something that people do to try to avoid dealing with the spiritual implications that they call this leprosy. But what it is whenever you're close to the Holy One and He begins to shine the light on you, you begin to see your flaws. And now the issue is, why are those flaws there? Where do they come from? What is the source? What have you embraced? What is the root? And how do you deal with the root? How do you get rid of it? Those are the questions. So He's going to give you protocols. He says, okay, there's the first day, you find it, you self-examine, and you go to your priest, and the priest has certain responsibilities. He does the test. Now, if you go to him with a spot, says that two things he's going to be looking for. There's two signs. This is a repetitive process. In the Torah, in the ways of the God, there's always two signs to tell you if this is or is not Metzora. The first sign is that the hair around wherever this spot is on your physical body that you're seeing manifested has turned white. Not all over your body, or gray. The hair has changed color. There's been a discoloration and a lightening, which means that there's something toxic happening in that area because it's losing its color. The pigmentation is going out of your hair. So this issue number one, that's just one issue. That's only one. And the other issue is the skin unlevel now? Has it depressed? Has it sunk in? Or has it raised? Is there another, or is it straight and level? As long as it's straight and level, and the hair's still black, brown, whatever it was when you started, then it's something else. Maybe you got a rash. Maybe you got some kind of physical situation. Maybe you're just seeing things, but it's not Zara'at. But if either one of those is true, then you set it apart for 7 days. 7 days you are shut up, put away. This is not about, these things cannot be analogized at all to the Rona. Okay, don't go there. I know people do such stuff all the time. This is not a sickness. This is not a quarantine. This is about a spiritual way of reconnecting with the Holy One. So he shuts you up. The priest says, I'll come back to you in 7 days. 7 days. And after 7 days, he comes back and checks the signs. Checks for the signs again. And if everything looks pretty good, you got 7 more days to be shut up and a visit on the 14th day. And on the 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, at 14 days, he comes back, and if it hasn't changed and hasn't got any of the signs additional than it was, then you're pronounced clean. You can go back to your normal activities, but you have had 14 days to meditate on what the root cause was and deal with the root causes of your issues. Now, the problem is that this can also affect your garments. Remember when I talked about the initial parable? In addition to making you a corporal being, incarnation, he gave you a garment to wear, a garment that reflected his holiness, a garment that reflected the majesty of who he was, like a coat of many colors Joseph would have had. It may be invisible to most people, but you know you're wearing something. You know you're carrying something of the glory of God everywhere you go. But unfortunately, whenever you let uncleanness attach itself to you, this beautiful garment that he gave you to wear that is unseen by most human eyes, but is felt in the spiritual realm, that begins to have holes in it too. That begins to have growths in it too. So he has a protocol for taking care of the mess where what you present to the world is uncleanness. What you present to the world is not the holiness and the image of God. And then he talks about, next week he'll talk about the houses. Your houses can get this. The homes where you live. You can project things out of your house, through the place where you live and the way you do things that are totally adverse to the will and the holiness of God. How you talk in your house, how you act in your house, what kind of imagery you project out of your house, what kind of noise you make, what kind of attitude you exhibit in your house. That becomes evidence of uncleanness as well. Well, much more we could talk about, but our time for our visit here with my friends from across the world is running to a close. I will have a few more minutes to talk with my friends here at the BLC. We're going to discuss some of these things more particular in detail, but I hope that we've given you the basic guidelines through which you will interpret and read from a whole different perspective, hopefully, the divine instructions, divine download of Parshas, Tazria, and Metzora. The Holy One is calling you. He's calling you back to his home. He's calling you back where you belong. He's calling you to reconnect with him in his holiness. He's calling you to put away, put aside, to take off the garments of uncleanness and the ways of uncleanness, the thoughts of uncleanness. He's calling you to reattach to his ways, his heart, his mind. Respond to his call today. Be caught up in it. Be changed by it. Become holy as he is holy. Amen. See you next time.